What's up, y'all? My name is Devontae, and I sacrifice my time so you don't have to. I can always take Jim Cornette, and I can separate the wrestling historian. I can separate the legend. I could separate, honestly, one of the greatest managers of all time. To be perfectly honest with you, I always looked at Paul Heyman and I looked at his work as a manager, and I've always thought of it as being slightly overrated. I think his stuff, obviously, in the late 80s, the mid to late 80s, was so much better. Paulie Dangerously is so much better than Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman's work as a manager in WWE has always been completely whack to me, at least from the standpoint of how he actually contributed to the match, which was almost never after the Ruthless Aggression era. He never contributed to the match, almost never, like a traditional manager. The most you can get out of Paul Heyman, which I think most people look at, is the fact that he knows how to talk. And for that, okay, great, but there's still a whole side of the actions in regards to the manager that's missing that you would get from a guy like a Bobby Heenan, that you would get from a guy like, for an example, like a Jimmy Hart, right? That you would get from a Grand Wizard, like that you would get from Paulie Dangerously himself back in the early 90s, that you would get from a Jim Cornette. And I made that comparison in order to tell you that I always felt, at least within that spectrum, that Jim Cornette was always better than Paul Heyman when it came to being a manager. He could talk just as good, if not better than Heyman, and I thought he was a more effective manager, at least from the terms in terms of kayfabe, right? Then again, with Paul Heyman, is more so when looking at his manager style, you live long enough to be, you live long enough to be a hero or die to be you die a hero or you live long enough to be the villain, some shit like that when in regards to Paul Heyman. But that's all to tell you that I have a healthy respect for Jim Cornette as a wrestling historian, as a legend, as a manager, all that stuff. Then we come to Jim Cornette as the human being. And I don't know how else to look at Jim Cornette as a human being when I hear the things that he talks about, besides the fact that it's pure evil. Right? Is that not what you will call wishing death on someone? Right? Is that not what you will call evil? That you're going to wish death on people because of things that you believe are happening, more so in conflict with your political beliefs, which I don't even know his political beliefs anymore, because it seems like, from at least socially speaking, I would think that Jim Cornette is like socially conservative when you hear the way he talks about the police, right? When you hear how he feels about, LGBT stuff, when you hear his rants on Sonny Kiss and Nyla Rose back in 2019, 2020, I would think socially it seems like he's conservative, right? No? I would think he's definitely not socially liberal. It doesn't feel like that. Or at least socially liberal from the 90s, but that pretty much just means you're a conservative nowadays, right? I don't understand physically. Maybe that could be the case, but even at that point, like, it's physical policy as how you believe or think it should be as a progressive, which is what Jim Cornette is. Shank Uger from the Young Turks has called him he called him a fiery breathing progressive back in 2009. He was a guest on the Young Turks, or at least he called in. He himself has called himself a social democrat. He absolutely is a progressive, a hardcore progressive at that. It's people having such stark differences in policy, socioeconomically, does that actually give you the right to want to wish death upon them? Or is that in combination with their personality? Maybe you think of them as a degenerate, which is weird, because Jim Cornette himself, when you look at his history with his wife, he even pokes fun at himself sometimes. He himself is a fucking degenerate, right? Go look at the stuff with Stacy and Big Show and, all the stuff that was said in the past about Jim Cornette. I never hold it against him. It's none of my business. But if that's your position on Donald Trump, your position, even if you want to go further and be like, well, he's a degenerate and he's a leader of the free world. I mean, God, good Lord Almighty. But I always look at Bill Clinton and say he was he's the one that set the precedent for shit like that. If that's your idea, that's your belief. My thing is, though, even with all that being said, to wish death upon someone, I think, is one of the most egregious things one could ever actually do. Here, check it out, because I've talked about this long enough without even reading you the context of what the fuck I'm focusing on right now. On Twitter, I won't read the gentleman's name. In fact, I won't link it either, because he quote tweeted him, and I don't want the guy who's talking about Jim Cornette or referring to Jim Cornette in the post to be, out there or exposed or anything like that. He asked, if you want to go look at it yourself, you can go look at it. He asked anyone else waiting for Jim Cornette to review the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, you think he's tough on the performance of AEW's talent, just wait till he critiques the sniper, right? Jim Cornette responds back with, just to address this, since everyone is asking, no, I can't relate my real feelings on this, or I will be speaking to a variety of federal agencies. Use your imagination and then double that, and you've got that. That's despicable. That's despicable. And you're going to have the Jim Cornette cucks out there. You might even have people who don't really care for Jim Cornette, but more so they fall on the left side and more so on the hardcore left, because I don't even see centrists who happen to be center left or actual legitimate liberals, right? Or just staunch moderate Democrats who like Joe Biden, but at the same time, they will never condone any of the shit that's going on right now. It's just the crazy, fucking insane progressive left, hardcore left, who legitimately think that the things that are happening in politics, you should have a position. I think you should vote. You should always play a part in the country that you live in, right? It's no different than living in the house. Like, even though you're not paying the bills in the house, even though you're not cleaning, you could be an 11-year-old kid. I mean, you live in the house. The least you can do is clean up a spot. It doesn't hurt. You're just doing your part to show gratitude that you live in the house. And if you're not paying bills and if you're not doing that, you're not doing, the least you can do is clean up that area that you happen to be in or you notice to be dirty while living in that house. Even though most people, and yes, obviously, most politics does not affect the normal person. There may be certain things here and there, but on the grand scheme of things, I will say for 90% of Americans, maybe even more, nothing really necessarily affects you politically, right? It doesn't directly affect you politically. But you live in the country, and in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I think if you are going to criticize either party, no matter what side you lie on, I think you owe it to yourself to vote. If for nothing else, to at least be like, well, I put some skin in this game, therefore I get to criticize whatever party. I mean, who are you to go around? And look, I know the whole metaphor I like to use all the time of I don't have to make Doritos in order to tell you that I hate Doritos. I understand that metaphor, but can I just be a bit, just for 1 second, I'm gonna completely contradict myself here. And yes, I think that 99.9% of the time does, that's something that you want to be able to use in order to tell people that you can make a decision without having to, appeal to authority, essentially, right? But in that case right there, how can you go around consistently criticizing each party, even if you disagree with each party, right? Hell, vote for independent. That's the purpose, and that's what I mean. Like, even you have an independent right there. Right? You live in the country. For people who say, I hate the country, what, you're here still, right? You ain't going anywhere. I don't feel like you want to go anywhere. Otherwise, you would have left by now. Where you going to go, huh? Tell me where you going to go. And you see everybody over here sneaking over here. The country's fucking great, no matter how you like to look at it. You just have luxury beliefs. That's what we call first world problems. What you're going through right now, if you're constantly bitching and moaning and complaining and groaning in America. You ain't poor when you can go to the government right now and get emergency food stamps, temporary emergency food stamps right now, setting you up to get more food stamps if you happen to be that poor. If you're a single mother, you can absolutely do whatever you want to do to get on welfare or food stamps. It doesn't matter. You are not in any situation that makes you believe that this country is fucking you over in any way, shape, or form. That's a luxury belief system that typically lies on the progressive side. Whenever I see people on the right criticize the country, it's more so because they feel like that they're, being shadow blocked, or, maybe they feel like progressives or the left or the marginalized, however you want to reflect off it, they're getting more attention for literally doing nothing, while you have these people who are paying taxes, doing this, doing that, doing this, doing that, being looked at as second-class citizens just because they're not in the position of the historic minority, right? That's how most people on the right, I can tell you, I'm on the right, I'm in that bubble. I can tell you how they usually feel about these situations. But I look at Jim Cornette, just to go back to him, because I'm getting off topic here, and I see the things that he says, and it's like, what did Donald Trump do to legitimately make you feel the way that you feel, to make you think that it's okay to want to see another human murdered because he doesn't reflect off of your beliefs? Right? What is the belief? Like, I can understand, for an example, to want to see someone or feel that way about someone if the whole condemnation comes from, like, for an example, Donald Trump legitimately got your family killed. Right? Like, maybe I can understand if you're someone in the military, right? And maybe, I don't know, maybe something happened with, by the way, that's not really the case, because Donald Trump never got us to any wars, not at one point during his entire tenure in his first 4 years as president. But I'm just saying, though, like, maybe it could be something along the lines of that, right? Even though that's not the case, but I'm just saying, right? Maybe you could be Muslim, right? Maybe you could be Muslim, and you can see how, and even though I disagree with it, but like I said, it is what it is. You know, maybe you could be Muslim and you can kind of look at Donald Trump as taking a side, you know, with the Israel conflict. I disagree. I still think you're fucking evil. But at the same time, it's like, okay, I can point to something and say to myself, okay, that's why you feel that way about that man. It's horrible. You shouldn't. But I know why you feel that way, right? Right? There's an actual reason why you feel that way. With Jim Cornette, it's literally because he's a Republican. There's nothing else tied to why he feels that way about Donald Trump. Again, for everything that you say about Donald Trump in regards to why you feel he should die, Jim Cornette, that's what you said in your tweet, it doesn't highlight anything that your side hasn't done, or that you yourself hasn't done, or like I said, from a societal standpoint, you don't advocate for that Donald Trump advocates for. It's literally because he's a Republican and you feel you have to go super duper fucking hard for your side all the time. And hell, if that means having to call for the death of someone, well, damn it, so be it. And I gotta think to myself, I look at what Jim Cornette says, and I know Brian Last, that's his co-host, obviously. He's also, I don't know if he's a progressive, but he's damn sure a Democrat, right? And I gotta believe that he doesn't like Donald Trump either. But I would think Brian Last, especially seeing the communication, he's a lot more sensible, right? Right? The way Brian Last speaks on situations like this, he criticizes, he talks a lot of stuff, a lot of shit, whatever, but you know, like, he's sensible enough to not, I gotta believe he doesn't want to see Donald Trump dead. How does he feel when he sees Jim Cornette say shit like this? Right? Now, obviously, we're never gonna get the legitimate reasoning, because obviously that's his best friend. That's never gonna happen. But I do see situations like how Jim Cornette speaks about this. And it's not as if we haven't seen Brian Last and Jim Cornette have, contrarian, not contrarian, that's not the right word, but differential positions when it comes to professional wrestling. I've heard them debate all the time over the Japanese women, for an example, right? Hell, even some of the matches that you see in AEW, I've seen Brian Last come to the defense of, while Jim Cornette completely just poons all over it, right? I just heard them debate over the Money in the Bank stuff with the women a couple days ago. So that's just from a wrestling standpoint. Politically, I gotta believe that. Well, how does he feel about, even if he doesn't like Donald Trump, how does he feel when he sees Jim Cornette go so fucking hard? You know, it's funny. It's like, again, you look at the Young Turks, it's like Shank Uger, and you look at Anna Kasparian, right? Or not even that, because even Shank is coming over to the right a little bit when it comes to the crime issue. It's like looking at the rest of the left, while the Young Turks in particular, not even Shank, but take him out of the equation, Anna Kasparian, she's in the middle, and she's a progressive. She's a hardcore progressive, but she's also not a fucking lunatic when it comes to societal consequences, and she looks at crime. She looks at what the fuck is going around her, and she's like, okay, guys, we can agree on the LGBT stuff, right? We can agree on the fact that we want the rich to pay like 98 million% of everything that's, worthy in the country, even though they pay 99 million% of everything that's worthy in the country. But I digress on that point also. But can we like not agree, or like, can we agree on the fact that if there's a guy coming up behind a woman and throwing something around her neck and dragging her to the floor to take her behind a car and then rape her, that's fucking insane and he should get the death penalty, which by the way actually fucking happened in New York? Can we agree on that? And they're just like, no, because he's black and therefore his race means more than your sexuality. There's a pyramid scheme to all of this. And it's like, that's how I look at with Jim Cornette, and I think I would presume Brian Last. He's the anti-conspiracy in all this, right? I gotta believe he sees the things that Jim Cornette says, and it's like, I agree with you on the surface, but maybe reel it in a little bit, because I don't like Donald Trump, but I kind of don't want to see the men die also because he disagrees with me. And Jim Cornette's like, well, boy, I tell you what, that there Donald Trump, well, maybe if he just, kind of agreed with me a little bit more, then maybe I wouldn't want to see him murder in cold blood in front of his family and in front of his constituents, in front of the people that support him. And as a matter of fact, all the supporters, all the constituents, all his family members, you guys are all there too. Let's just take y'all out at one shot. Let's just go full on genocide. Let's just go on and do it. Republicans let's just completely eradicate them people off Earth, because we got different opinions. And you know what that means? Different opinions means a death sentence. It's despicable. It's despicable. And you see how many of the people that he's ran off as far as friends are considered, people who were legitimately he put on the map, like Kane, for an example. Kane is a lovable guy. You don't have to agree with Kane. Look, I look at Bryan Danielson he's arguably my favorite wrestler today. Bryan Danielson is my favorite wrestler today. And I would tell you that I don't agree with 90% of what Bryan Danielson talks about from a political standpoint. But I want his autograph. I want to talk to him about wrestling. I think Bryan Danielson seems like one of the nicest guys on the planet. I could absolutely be his homeboy and his home skillet biscuit. Hell, again, I live in fucking Miami, folks. My entire family are liberals and progressives. All my fucking friends, for the most part, are liberals and progressives. Like, what? I just don't understand. Why the fuck can you just be friends with people who disagree? And if you disagree, you just don't talk about the situation. Instead, you take positions, and then the worst part about it is, that's not even you. You don't live out those positions necessarily, right? The things that the progressives outwardly, act or what would you say? Not even. I'll give you a perfect example. The people who legitimately try to get Jim Cornette canceled all the time on the AEW side, they're all people who agree with him politically. They're all people who agree with him politically. I wonder if Jim Cornette recognizes that legitimately. I will argue 80% of his fan base that agrees with him are almost all conservative. That's not too far-fetched to say, right? 80% of his fan base that agrees with him on professional wrestling. I'll even venture to say that he has more conservative fans than he does progressive, but probably even moderate Democrats, because of his traditional outlook on professional wrestling, especially being from the South. Believe it, Jim Cornette and the way he thinks about the world, not only alienate those people for no fucking reason because they disagree with you, you want to see them dead. You don't have a legitimate reason as to why you believe Donald Trump should die or why you believe Donald Trump should go for the things that you just believe it because he's a Republican. And I think that's downright fucking evil. Absolutely outright fucking evil. You wish death upon a man. That in itself is already evil, but you wish death upon a man because he disagrees with you. It gets no more evil than that. But then again, Jim Cornette he's an atheist, so does he even recognize what the fuck evil happens to even be from a morality standpoint? I don't fucking know. Then again, I know we can get the people out there, the theists out there. Devontae, atheism is just a rejection of religion. We happen to believe what's good and bad, even though religion is the moral compass of what even sets the precedent within Western culture or even the world in general. Whatever, that's a whole fucking conversation that people are going to probably start in the comment section that I don't give a fuck about. Have that thought, talk about it amongst each other. Jim Cornette, super fucking evil for what he said about Donald Trump for literally no reason whatsoever besides the fact that he's a Republican. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let me get the fuck up out of here and let me go find a ship with pirates, and hopefully they have a plank, and it's a very, very short plank. I will get my blindfold and I will walk the plank, and hopefully I can skibbity myself off said pirate ship into the deepest, darkest ocean, never to be seen again, never to be heard again. And hopefully there's another life where none of you pussies exist. Okay, with that being said, my name is Devontae, and I'll be catching you guys later. Adeuces and a P eyes.